Guess what? The Taxpayers Alliance has done on the day that the TUC meets, the TUC Congress begins today, right? Because it is technically conference season, even though nobody can really do it properly. It turns out that education union bosses have topped this year's annual public sector trade union rich list with 6 senior staff sharing, get this, £1,296,869 between them. The average wage for a public sector union boss is £153,935. So these champagne socialists, as I like to call them, are truly that. Champagne socialists. You can buy an awful lot of Bollinger if you're making £154,000 a year. Let's talk now to Duncan Simpson, Research Director at the Taxpayers Alliance. Duncan, this is quite breathtaking, I have to say. Great work.
Thanks a lot. It is indeed. I mean, we've done this for a couple of years now, and year after year, we've seen these kind of figures. And, one would think it's not sort of an immediate taxpayer issue, but ultimately, they get vast sums of money. So there's a couple of particular examples, one of which is trade union facility time. And that's basically paid time off for union reps within public sector organisations to look after union duties, so mediation and so forth. And that came to over £81 million the year before last. Let's not forget that quite a few of these unions who are the most aggressive, particularly the rail unions, are getting vast sums of cash now through not least HS2. I think the total taxpayer support, again, last year was over £7 billion. That would be rising year after year with the construction of HS2 if the government really is insistent on going to do that. Obviously, people choose to join a union. That's absolutely their prerogative. We're not going to tell people not to go and join a union, but ultimately it's a very hard circle to square when on the one hand unions are saying we're speaking to public sector workers, but on the other we're demonstrably not helping the public at a particularly difficult time, not least reopening the schools.
No, exactly right. And I'm looking at an incredible figure here, and I take the view that that this is way over and above what she should have ever been given. But Sally Hunt, formerly the General Secretary of the University and College Union, she stood down apparently in March 2019. But her total remuneration, £534,805. I mean, £500,000 a year to run a union. It's extraordinary.
It's remarkable. I think she had a pretty hefty salary. I think she had a car allowance of something like £4,300. So I'm sure you can get a really nice Mercedes E-Class. Lease that for a year for far less than that. I'm sure. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's remarkable. And bear in mind that Sally Hunt was the union leader who time after time, month after month, was bemoaning the government during the lecturers' strike of their pensions, and not least was personally going after quite a few senior academics who, of course, earn too much. I think that the principal of Edinburgh University got a total pay packet, so salary and pension and so forth, in excess of £400,000, the very same figure which she received as post-employment payments, whatever that means. Right. So it's breathtaking. On the one hand, holding the position of I'm allegedly standing up for my lecturers, but on the other hand, quite happy to take my union members' cash to do something in retirement.
Well, you might say the same about Dave Prentice, who's been in the news quite recently. The public service union Unison, of course, is his particular area of expertise. £138,531. Extraordinary stuff. And if you look at some of the civil service unions as well, they are all the people who are saying it's not safe to return to work. They're the ones who are saying, our members are at risk. And yet they are literally living high on the hog with money which is coming to them by those very members.
Yeah, indeed. There's going to be a really interesting point in a couple of years' time where you'll very likely have a majority of people who work in the public sector are no longer a member of a trade union. So we're just above that threshold at the moment. It's about 52%. So in a few years' time, when Frances O'Grady and her successor get up and say, we are speaking on behalf of the public sector, we'll be able to turn around and say, no, actually, and the majority of the people within these public sector organisations don't choose to unionise, and so therefore for you to have the cheek to put forward this position, which may ultimately close down sections of the country, it's even more galling than it was previously. So that'd be an interesting point how the TUC and other trade unions, especially in the public sector, actually deal with that.
Absolutely right. And here's a good one as well. One of my favourites, the British Medical Association, which people, because of the name, are under the impression is not actually a trade union, but it very clearly is a trade union. and they were very vocal during the whole COVID sort of early days, weren't they, during the pandemic, as people were supposedly not getting enough PPE, literally telling lies about what PPE was not being supplied when it turned out that it was being supplied to COVID wards. They were making out that it wasn't, and in fact the people who were actually in the COVID wards were saying no, there's no problem at all. But the head of the BMA, a guy called Dr. Chan Nagpal, 193,414 quid.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think his salary alone, which was 171,000, that's something like 6 times the multiple of a junior doctor. So
Right.
sort of a foundation.
Well, how many nurses would you get for that?
Probably a similar number, about half a dozen, maybe slightly more than that.
Yeah.
So it's pretty galling. And bear in mind that the BMA, in particular, in recent years, has effectively become a campaigning organisation. So rather than saying, well, actually, it's we're having some difficulty with this particular trust by introducing some new staff, they're just very, very proactively using their members' cash to go and campaign on increasingly inane topics which don't have any relevance to doctors or indeed the people that they seek to serve in the NHS.
Right. And I mean, do you think that people who pay into the union would be surprised at these figures? I think they would, because they're probably even the most staunch union members must believe that the leaders of their unions are doing the best work they can for the benefit of the members. However, I think they would balk at the eye-watering 6-figure salaries that these guys are doing.
Yeah, it's pretty fast. I would say partially in some of the unions' defence. I mean, we go through loads of unions' returns, effectively their annual reports, and there are quite a few who don't sort of hit the number that we look for, which is £100,000 total remuneration. There are many who are much smaller sort of regional unions who just won't have that kind of outlay for that. But a lot of the largest unions, which are based in the West End or other parts of central London, have seen these huge and creeping salaries over the years. And as I say, when the number of people who are actually members of trade unions, both in the private and the public sector, has been declining for 40 years. It does beg the question, what exactly are you paying for with your union dues?
Yeah, absolutely right. Duncan, well, listen, it's great work. If you've got a link to put out there for us, do tweet it out and we'll retweet it for you. Duncan Simpson there, Research Director at Taxpayers Alliance. Fantastic research here in which it says the average remuneration of 29 union bosses on more than 100,000 was 153,935. The highest paid public sector trade union boss, Sally Hunt, former General Secretary of the University and College Union, 534,805 quid. These are the people who are telling the teachers not to go back to work. Is it any wonder that the schools are in a terrible, terrible mess? I'd like to hear from you, by the way, if you're a parent, because my kids went back to school last week and already they're being told, things are not looking good. We'll probably have to shut the school again soon. Imagine telling that to 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. What an absolute disgrace.